This conference will now be recorded. This
Discuss the role of
conference will now be recorded.
Today we will discuss the role of active and the passive voice in terms of our speaking and writing. As you know, we had started our active and passive voice in our last session, and it was left incomplete on the last session because we had promised you that we will come with the OET perspective of OET of active passive on the next one, that is today. So today we are basically going to learn the significance, the relevance of the active and the passive during an OET examination. Some people may find it that active and passive have the least connection of all the other parameters of English in reference to the OET writing and speaking sections. But I want to warn you, and I want to make you cautious that the passive voice forms a very basic and a skeletal part when we perform the tasks of speaking and writing during any OET exam. Let's see in our further slides as to how it is. First of all, on our last session, I made you understand, I gave you a deep insight of the active and the passive voice. On our last session, we had clarified our concept of the active and the passive voice. Once we have cleared our concept, only then we would be able to apply that concept of ours to our OET examination to avoid any sort of mistakes, thus maximizing our marks in the OET examination. So, as all of you know, that the active voice is the most direct form of interpreting an idea or an emotion. In the active voice, the subject himself or herself or itself does the activity. For example, Columbus discovered America. This was the example we had taken on the last one also. Columbus discovered America. Here, the focus is being given to Columbus. The focus, the emphasis is given to Columbus because Columbus is the subject here and America is the object in this sentence. In the passive voice, we lay our emphasis upon the object first. As you can see in the example, America was discovered by Columbus. Here, America has been put first, and the subject, that is the person who performed the task, has been put in the later part of the sentence. Just look at the contrast between both the sentences. In the first type of voice, that is the active voice, we wrote that Columbus discovered America. We laid our emphasis upon the subject, and our subject was Columbus. The object was America. In the passive voice, we lay our emphasis upon the object first, and the subject follows the object. In the active voice, the subject is doing something, and in the passive voice, something is done for the subject. America got discovered by Columbus. It's not Columbus who discovered America, but America got discovered by Columbus. In the passive voice, it seems as if America chose a specific person, that is Columbus, to discover itself. How humorous it is, how sarcastic it is. How can an object choose somebody to perform a task that is to be carried upon itself by a subject? But this is the contrast between the active and the passive voice. This is what the contrast, the basic contrast between both type of voices is. Now, we had taken some terminology to understand the active and the passive voice. I took an example with you. We are just recapitulating to lay our basis, and then we'll form a building over that basis to understand and to apply the concept of active and passive voice on our OET examination. So I took an example. James opened the door. James opened the door. Now in this sentence, there is a subject. The subject is James. There is an activity that went on, and that is open. And there is an object. The subject did an activity over the object. Just listen to me once again. The subject performed the task, did an activity over an object. In this sentence, our agent was James. The action is to open, and the receiver of the action is the door. So this is an active voice. James opened the door. Had we had to write it in the passive form, how would we have done it so? The passive voice of the same sentence would have been, the door was opened by James. The door was opened by James. I'm writing the passive voice of this sentence into your chat windows. So this is how the active form got converted to the passive form. The door was opened by James. In the active voice, our emphasis was upon James. We want to tell somebody that it is James who opened the door. But in the passive voice, we are laying our emphasis upon the door. In the passive voice, we would rather say the door was opened by James. Now on your screens, we have a case note, a part of a case note. Just took a look at it. Mrs. Jones suffered a stroke yesterday. The cardiologist suggested her an echo. What's wrong with these two sentences? I told you on your last session also that with the above two sentences, nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong. But when it comes to an OET examination, there is a little bit of immaturity here. The two sentences given in the top part of your page are not wrong at all. They are not wrong at all. But with relevance to the OET examination, they are a bit lesser immature. A more mature form of transforming these two sentences, these two pieces of case notes would have been, Mrs. Jones suffered a stroke yesterday. She was suggested an echo by the cardiologist. And why is it so? Let's see. I'll tell you the previous slide later on, but first of all, let's see to an ambiguity that the passive voice is only possible for a transitive verb. I told you this thing very clearly on our last session also, that a passive voice is only possible for a transitive verb. Now you must be wondering as to what this transitive verb is. So I want to tell you that verbs are of two types. Verbs are of two types, transitive verb and intransitive. Let's take a look. And I have just simplified the way you understand the forms of these verbs, that is the transitive verb and intransitive verb. I have simplified it very much so that you are able to conceptualize in your brains as to what is the basic logic behind a transitive and an intransitive verb basically is. So, transitive verb, whenever we speak about transitive verb, somebody does them. A transitive verb is being done by somebody. For example, I stopped the car. I stopped the car. So it is I who did something. I have done something intentionally. I stopped the car. So whenever we talk about the transitive verbs, intransitive verbs, somebody is performing an activity. For example, I stopped the car. Let's take a few more examples. She opened the window. He ate an ice cream. He ate an ice cream. So all these examples we have taken are forms of transitive verbs. Just take a glance once again. I stopped the car. She opened the window. He ate an ice cream. All these are transitive verbs. Somebody is doing something. Somebody is performing an activity. So when somebody does something, the verb is transitive verb. So with this notion, you can relate as to what an intransitive verb might be. Intransitive verbs happen on their own. For example, the car stopped. Let's take a few more examples. It rained. The baby cried. The baby cried. So all these examples that I have mentioned on your screens are intransitive verbs. They are happening naturally. Somebody is not doing them intentionally. Of course, you might think that the baby is crying on its own, but nobody made the baby to cry. The baby cried all of a sudden. Nobody knows the reason. Nobody made the baby cry over here. If somebody had made the baby cry, we would have written, he made the baby cry. He made the baby cry. And the passive voice would have been, the baby was made crying by somebody. So on your screens, let us look at the form of transitive verbs. In transitive verbs, somebody is doing something. For example, I stopped the car. She opened the window. He ate an ice cream. And in case of intransitive verbs, something happens naturally. Something happens on its own. The car stopped. It rained. The baby cried. Now let's take a few examples. Let's take a few examples over here. Until then, if you have some questions, please let me know. If you have some questions until now, please let us know, because we are coming to the OET perspective now. But first of all, we'll take a few examples. Okay, now I'm writing. I broke my coffee mug. Which verb is this? Please reply in your chat windows. Which verb is this? I broke my coffee mug. Can you let me know as to what verb is this? Transitive or intransitive verb? If your answer is transitive, just write T. If your answer is intransitive, just write I. Okay, Maheen, Mishab, Imran, Benita, Usma, Aishwarya, Sevlam, Nemish, Usma, Aishwarya, Zabin, all of you, very nice. SD, very nice, everyone. This is transitive verb. Let's take one more example. My coffee mug broke. My coffee mug broke. Which verb is this? Transitive or intransitive? Yes, yes, very nice. All of you replied correctly. This is intransitive verb. So, my coffee mug broke. For this sentence, the passive voice is not possible. But for I broke my coffee mug, the passive voice is possible. Can you write the passive voice of I broke my coffee mug? Can you write in your chat windows the passive voice of I broke my coffee mug? Please go on. We have to make an exercise done over here. I broke my coffee mug. Can you write me the Okay, fine. All of you have replied wonderfully. The answer to this is my coffee mug was broken by me. We can replace this my with the also. The also. The coffee mug was broken by me. But if we mention here my, that's perfectly fine because here it comes to know as to who possessed the coffee mug. Okay, so here we have few sentences. I'm writing to clarify in front of you that the first sentence is active. Active. The second sentence is passive. And for the third sentence, passive is not possible. Passive not possible. Please take a look over the screen. I have clarified it very much for you. The first sentence is at the active voice. It comprises of a transitive verb. In a transitive verb, somebody does something. In a transitive verb, somebody does something. So I broke my coffee mug is transitive verb and it is in its active voice. And for transitive verbs, the passive voice is possible. The passive voice is possible. So we transformed this active voice into a passive voice and we wrote, my coffee mug was broken by me. The third sentence contains an intransitive verb. The third sentence contains an intransitive verb, and for an intransitive verb, the passive form is not possible. The passive form is not possible. Let's take one more example. The summer heat melted my ice cream. So, doctors and nurses, can you tell me which verb is this and which voice is this? Please write me the verb and the voice. Transitive, Dr. Atul, Misfa, Imran, Aishwarya, Fasiha, Lizzie, Unsa, Jabin, active and transitive verb. Very nice. Let's write over here. This is active and transitive. This is active and transitive. Transitive verb and active. Benita, Peace, Salma, Shiver, everybody of you, nice. Let's take a look at the second sentence. My ice cream melted. Which voice is this and which verb is this? Please reply. What voice is this and which verb is this? Intransitive and active. Very nice. Active and intransitive. Very nice. Let's write here. Active and intransitive. Fine. Imran, Misbah, Salma, very nice. Imran. Okay, so now Imran asked me a question that, sir, isn't melting a natural process done by the sun? How do you know the sun melted ice cream? It might have been a fire that broke out in some building, or maybe the temperature that went low after an electric cutoff. You do not know as to what the specific reason of the ice cream that got melted for which is. So this is active. My ice cream melted. My ice cream melted. And let's convert the first sentence that was the active into the passive voice. Let's see as to how it would be written in the passive voice. My ice cream was melted by the summer heat. My ice cream was melted by the summer heat. Selvam, Aishwarya, very nice. Very nice. Let's take one more example, and here you would be able to clarify your concept pretty clearly. She speaks Arabic. She speaks Arabic. And she speaks very quickly. She speaks very quickly. Yes, Dharanee, you can write it this way also. She speaks Arabic and she speaks very quickly. The first sentence is transitive verb active. The second sentence is intransitive verb active. Intransitive active. And we know that for transitive verb, the passive transformation is possible. For intransitive verb, the passive transformation is not possible. So let's transform the first sentence into the passive voice. Arabic is spoken by her. Arabic is spoken by her. I hope things are clear to you. If they are clear to you, kindly write yes. If you have some problem, write your problem in the chat window so that I could proceed ahead. Okay, so now Maheen has asked me a question that how is the second sentence intransitive? How is the second sentence intransitive? The second sentence is intransitive, Maheen, because when somebody speaks very quickly, that's his or her nature. They are not doing it knowingly. The subconscious mind is doing it. It is happening naturally. You cannot make it seize down. This is why it is intransitive. For example, the sun rises in the east. The sun rises in the east. Now the sun is rising. The sun is rising. But the sun is rising naturally. Nobody is making the sun rise. So if somebody speaks quickly, nobody is doing an activity. So somebody speaks quickly. That's a nature. But when somebody speaks Arabic, they are knowingly speaking Arabic. If they want, they can keep quiet, they can keep mute, or they can switch over their language. So speaking Arabic is a transitive verb. Somebody has to do it. But speaking quickly is intransitive. It is happening naturally. Nobody is forcing somebody to speak quickly, nor the person himself or herself is speaking quickly. He or she is speaking quickly only because of the feeding of the subconscious mind. I hope I'm clear, Maheen. If still you have some problem, I would try to create a more handiverse so that things are clear in your brain. So Maheen, may I proceed? We'll proceed by, okay, fine, Maheen. Very nice. So, you know, whenever one student asks a question, the concept of all other students are clear. So please try to develop a habit of asking questions. I know a very well saying said by somebody that if you ask, you are a fool for 5 minutes. If you ask a question, you might be a fool among your group just for 5 minutes. But if you do not ask, you are a fool for a lifetime. Suppose I ask a question and everybody laughs at me that what a shame, you don't know even this. That shame is just for 5 minutes. But if I do not ask, thinking what other people might think, then I would remain a fool for the lifetime. So develop a habit of asking questions. You're asking of one question. You're asking of one question would do something very significant. It would clear the concept of all the remaining students. So you give a sacrifice for others. So thank you, Maheen, for asking a question. Very nice. Now, she speaks very quickly. The passive is not possible. She speaks very quickly. The passive is not possible. This is what I was trying to tell you, that a transitive verb, somebody does it. Somebody does a transitive verb. For example, I stopped the car. The car stopped. If the car stopped, that is an intransitive verb. The car stopped on its own. Nobody stopped the car. When I say I stopped the car, transitive verb. Whenever I say the car stopped, intransitive verb. intransitive verb. So these were a few examples that we had taken. Now we have to understand as to why we are studying active and passive voice for OET examination. We are paying so much of endeavor, toil and moil over the active and the passive voice for an OET exam for a reason. And the reason is that whenever you speak or whenever you write an OET exam, try to use the passive voice. I am repeating my words. Please be all ears. Try to be in the passive form. Whenever you write a referral letter, a transfer letter, a discharge letter, try to be in the passive voice. Try to be in the passive voice. Avoid using the active voice. Whenever you are taking an OET speaking task, try to be in the passive voice. Please try to be in the passive voice. I'll tell you why. Now, there is a sentence on your screens. Please be very, very attentive. I showed Mr. Farr how to dress the wounds. I showed Mr. Farr how to dress the wounds. So, is there something wrong with this sentence? See, today I'm going to ask you very much. So please be ready with your fingers on your keyboards so that you type the answers in the chat windows. Dr. Prashant, if you are online, may I request you to leave one student unmuted so that there would be a one-to-one conversation if you find it suitable. I'm though not very sure about it, but if you want, you can do so.
Sure, Manuj Sir. Student, they can unmute themselves by clicking on the mic option. If they just click on the mic option, they can unmute for a while.
So students, I'm requesting you that one of you not creating a hodgepodge, one of you unmute yourself and please tell me that do you find something wrong with this sentence? So who is going to reply?
I think
I showed
this is
think there is no present that I showed Mr. Farr that how to dress the wounds. I think there is absence of that.
Gentlemen.
I think this is the direct form of conversation.
Okay, you are saying that what's your name, madam?
Jabin.
Jabin. Okay, so Jabin, you have said that this sentence is correct. Is it so?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, very nice, Jabin. Some other person, Salma, what do you think?
Yeah, hi everyone. I think it's incorrect according to the grammar because I showed Mr. Farr how to dress the ones. It's incorrect because the subject, it's not important to mention who, like I showed. I didn't think so. It's a correct answer, sorry, a correct sentence because the subject is not important to mention because Mr. Farr, I can say instead of that Mr. Farr was how to dress. Sorry, I showed Mr. Farr how to dress the wand. Yeah, I think it's incorrect.
It's incorrect. Okay. Dr. Maheen, do you have something to say? Dr. Maheen?
Let me tell you, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, here is written that I showed Mr. Farr how to dress the wounds, but I think there is absence of that. I showed Mr. Farr that how to dress the wounds. I think relative pronoun is absent.
Or we can say Mr. Farr was shown by me how to dress the wounds.
Who is this mademoiselle?
Jabi, we can say Mr.
Jabin.
Far was
Okay,
shown by me
Jabin, kindly
how
stay
to
tuned.
do the dress.
You have something, you have said something correctly. But Selvam, are you there, Selvam? Can you tell me as to is there something wrong with this sentence over here?
Yeah, I think it's the
Mm.
correct sentence. Maybe we can add as like I showed Mr. Fire that how to dress the wounds. So I
Okay,
think it's
fine.
correct.
You can now all of you can unmute yourselves. Now it's my turn to speak. Thank you very much for contributing.
I want to say something, sir.
Oh, please. Yeah, please.
I think this sentence is in active voice, so we have to change it in passive. I think
And what's your name, mademoiselle?
unsa.
Unsa. Okay, fine, Unsa. So now all of you can unmute yourself. All of you, please mute yourself. Thank you very much for your responses. But I want to give, I would have given a standing applause to two students, but since I cannot stand, so just accept an imaginative standing ovation from my side. Jabin and Unsa, very well, very nice, Jabin and Unsa. All of you also were correct, but Selvam and who was the other gentleman? I forgot the name. I'm sorry. Yeah, two of the gentlemen said that the correct sentence should have been somewhat like this. I showed Mr. Farr that how to dress the wounds. This is wrong. We don't have to add that here. This sentence is correct. The first thing, this sentence is correct. The second thing is that Jabin and Unsa said very correctly that this sentence is correct and this sentence is in its active form, so it requires to be transformed into the passive form. But why? But why? Just listen to me once again. Just listen to me once again. This sentence is correct. First thing, this sentence is correct. Second thing, this sentence is in the active voice. Now I told you that whenever you perform the OET speaking and the writing task, you have to make the maximum usage of the passive voice. So Jabin and Unsa said very rightly that, sir, this sentence is correct and this sentence is in the active voice. So this correct sentence should be transformed into the passive voice. Let us see how. This is a very true statement, but whenever we are narrating or whenever we are communicating to another healthcare specialist, we try to make the patient more important. We try to make the patient come in the first place. So whenever two doctors are speaking to one another, two nurses are speaking to one another, or a doctor or a nurse are speaking or writing a letter, may it be a referral letter, may it be a transfer letter, may it be a discharge letter, whenever two medical professionals are communicating to each other, the first thing they have to do is that they have to put their patient first. The person who is analyzing or checking your OET examination is very keen in observing small things like this. So when would your patient come first? When will your patient come first? Your patient would only come first if you use the active voice, the passive voice, I'm sorry. If you use the active voice, you yourself would come in the first place, and that we have to avoid. That we have to avoid. So what we have to do is that we have to put our patient in the first place. We have to put our patient in the first place because the two medical professionals know each other. So it's worthless to mention each other in the first places. It is worth to mention your patient in the first place. So Are you the only person who can show somebody how to drape a wound, how to dress a wound? No, your colleague can also do it. So why are you putting yourself first? Let's see the previous slide once again. I showed Mr. Farr how to dress the wounds. Are you trying to show your ego to somebody that you are the only person who knows how to dress a wound and you can teach somebody how to dress a wound or how to drape a wound? No. So Jabin and Unsa said and replied very correctly that, sir, here we have to make use of the passive voice and the examiner is going to check only these small things. This sentence is correct. You can write this sentence, but you are not going to have any marks for this sentence. You are not going to have any marks for this sentence because of the unprofessional attitude you have shown by writing this sentence. You tend to be very unprofessional whenever you write sentences beginning with I, we. Your sentence must start with your patient. Your patient is your priority. Your patient is your focus. You have to lay emphasis upon the name of your patient, on the relevance of your patient, on the reference of your patient. So, Mr. Farr was shown how to dress a wound. By whom? It's none of somebody's business. Everybody knows that a medical healthcare professional would have taught Mr. Farr how to dress a wound. So this is the correct form of writing that sentence in its passive voice by putting your patient first. By putting your patient first. So Mr. Farr was shown how to dress a wound. To your reader, the showing is more important than who did the showing. The showing was important. Who did the showing was of the least significance. Do you agree with me? Do you understand what I tried to say? If you understood, write Y in the chat windows. Let me proceed ahead. If there is some problem, please let me know as to what your problem is so that I arrive to a solution of your problem. Fine, very nice, very nice. Okay, so now we have another sentence over here. We have another sentence over here. A blood sample was taken on Tuesday. A blood sample was taken on Tuesday. This sentence is in its passive voice. This sentence is in its passive voice. The active voice, I'm writing in your text chat windows, the active voice would have been Mr. Farr gave, provided, or facilitated a blood sample on Tuesday. Dr. Maheen, you have wrote, Mr. Farr took a blood sample. Mr. Farr is not taking a blood sample. A blood sample is being taken from Mr. Farr. A doctor is taking a blood sample from Mr. Farr. Another passive voice would have been, I took a blood sample from Mr. Farr. I took a blood sample from Mr. Farr. Now, who took the blood sample is not important. Of course, the doctor took a blood sample. Yes, Benita, it's correct. Mr. Farr's blood sample was taken on Tuesday, but it is also the passive voice. So, the sentence written on your screens, a blood sample was taken on Tuesday from Mr. Farr, is correct, is in its passive voice. The active voice would have been, I took a blood sample from Mr. Farr on Tuesday. But we have to avoid I. We have to avoid I and we. We have to put the patient or things relating to the patient first. So the blood sample is important. The patient is important. Who took the blood sample is not important. Everybody understands that a doctor or a nurse took a blood sample. So this starts with a blood sample. It is in the passive form, and everybody understands as to who took the blood sample. We performed a pelvic exam on the patient. Is this sentence correct? First of all, you tell me, is this sentence grammatically correct? Yes. Everybody of you saying yes. Is this sentence correct with reference with regards to OET? Is this sentence correct with regards to OET? Benita, Nemish, Aishwarya, Sevla, Miswa, Usman, Maheen, Nibanita? No. Very nice. See, this is what I was trying to give you. I was trying to imbibe into your brains that this sentence is grammatically correct, but whenever it comes to OET, relevance of OET, this sentence is not correct. So how would have we written this sentence? A pelvic exam was done or performed. Very nice. Let's see. A pelvic exam was performed. Also, we can write done on the patient. On the patient. A pelvic exam was either performed or done. You can use both the words on the patient. Very nice, Shivar. Maheen, Peace, Imran. Very nice. All of you have replied very correctly. So with this notion, I am able to gain a confidence that you have by now you would have understood the relevance of using the active and the passive voice with regards to the OET examination. I told you that whenever it comes to taking an OET speaking or writing section of the OET exam, we have to avoid the active voices. Although the active voices are correct, but we try to avoid the active voices. What we try to do is to incorporate the passive voice whenever it comes to OET writing or OET speaking. So this was all on today's session. Although today's session was a short session, but we have tried to gain a lot in this session. We have tried to understand the relevance of active and passive voice with regards to OET examinations. We would try to pay our focus on other such grammatical aspects like the usage of prepositions, modals, the reported and the direct and the indirect speech when it comes to OET speaking. So with this notion, I tend to wind up my session. If you have any question, you can write it in the chat windows. That was all from me. Thank you very much. Rest up to Dr. Prashant. Thank you for inviting me, Teachio Academy. I'm highly indebtful to you for this wonderful session. Regards. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuj Sir. And guys, once again, there was a great session by Manuj Sir. There is always something new in his session. So guys, if you have any question, you can just WhatsApp me or text me, And also today is the last day of our discount group for July. From today I will not accept any bookings for July. And if you guys want to book further months like from August, you can text me, or you can just visit to our website and book your booking there. So on this notion, guys, we are winding our session for today. Thank you and all the best.